Hello, this is Dorian. I guess I'm making a video just for me to process thoughts about names and name change. I guess that's what this video or whatever will be about. Just some thoughts about my name and name change. So um, I've been in the process of legally changing my name, my first name, um, basically this whole year. So just for a timeline of events, I filled out the forms on January 1st, 2023. But I wouldn't actually submit the forms for a while. So then I officially submitted the forms March 31st, which also happens to be Transgender Awareness Day, or Transgender Day of Memorial, Day of Mourning. And so that was, intentional and kind of using the momentum of that day to be like, okay, let me actually submit these forms, let me actually go through this that I've been planning to do for much longer than a year. But just like the actual thinking about more so the bureaucratic process of it, rather than mental emotional stuff. So like timeline of events, actually submitting the paperwork, like at the beginning of the process, so to speak, of actually submitting the paperwork electronically, March 31st, 2023. And then so today is July 13th, 2023. And I wouldn't say that it's done yet, but it's nearly done. To illustrate one point that I was learning about doing this once getting into it is that it's not like there's this idea of flipping a switch of like you do a thing once and then you're done and then it's done and you can be like name change day. More the opposite of like it's a process. There isn't like a moment where like this is the moment. And I think I got that false perception from, I guess, osmosis through society, from weddings, from like the tradition of cishet weddings, and of I don't know if it's just Western or the tradition of the cishet woman will change her last name to her husband's last name, and there's that sense that it happens like instantly, like before the marriage it's Miss Jones, and then you get married and then the next day it's Mrs. Smith. But in reality it's not like that, or maybe it kind of is, because I don't know on the inside what it's like for married people. But, I'm figuring out that if you are a cisgendered heterosexual woman marrying a man and changing your last name to your husband's last name, I think that's probably the easiest way of going through the name change process. And if you're anything other than that, it's a harder process to go through. And so, not that I know, just from what little fractions of bits that I know about the bits of laws that pertain to me in my state, because it also depends on what state you're in, and those laws are constantly in flux all the time, which leads me down a rabbit hole of emotional trauma, thinking about all the anti-transgender legislation actively being passed right now to make things that I just did today that seemed simple and bureaucratic illegal. So that maybe this is why I need to try to process out some of my thoughts about all of this, because it is complicated. It's not just like you check a box on a form, you go in, you see some person, you pay them, you come back, new name, and everything is fine and everything is easy. And for me, in a lot of ways, it's very easy and it's very privileged and I'm very lucky. because there's a whole lot of factors at every step of the way that could have made it impossible and is impossible if, if but for the fact that I live in a certain zip code, the literally down to the state I live in, but also being white, and also I think being assigned female at birth too is another factor for changing gender markers, and whether or not that it's I get a lot of privilege and a lot of passes that allow me to navigate through some steps of this bureaucratic system that are locked down and actively locked down for a lot of other people. But backing up to the marriage thing and the idea that changing your name was like an instantaneous thing, I think I probably osmosed that from the thought of culturally, watching, cishet weddings, and then it's like that name change happens in a day. But in reality, even for someone in that situation, I don't think that's actually how it happens. But unless you're getting married yourself, maybe you don't see the behind the scenes details. Maybe, you have the ceremonial wedding and also the legal wedding, but then and also you have to go to court to get, I don't know what's involved with, you have to get the marriage certificate. So it's not like it's easier per se, because I imagine the legalities of getting married and getting that marriage certificate can be and are very difficult. But I think if you get that marriage certificate, that can maybe allow you to skip some other steps. So I imagine, there's a smoother pathway if you're cis woman, heterosexual, married, changing just the last name to her husband's last name. That's probably the smoothest pathway. But then I wonder if you are a cis male just trying to change your last name to your wife's last name, if that process even is harder for you and you have to go through more steps. So again, if just comparing on a very similar level, if those two things are not equal, then we need to change the legislation to make it equal. So in the example of if you have, a cis woman bride marrying a cis male groom, if the wife wants to change her last name to her husband's last name, and that is the process simpler for her than if her husband, if she wanted to keep her last name and her husband wanted to change his last name to her last name. I think in some states and some zip codes and some places, I think he has to go through more steps than she does, because I think she just has to take the marriage certificate over, and then that is the permission you get to go. So then you basically just go straight from marriage certificate to Social Security office to change your social right there. But maybe some places the cishet husband in the scenario could change his last name to his wife's last name with just as few steps as her. But maybe in some other zip codes, he might have to do more steps. He might have to go get a separate court date or something. And then which areas do you have to get public notice to publish your name in the paper and which don't? And does that vary state to state, or does that vary depending on why you're changing your name? So if you're just changing your name due to marriage, you don't have to publish? Or does getting the marriage certificate require publishing, so that would just be redundancy because you have to publish for the marriage certificate? Or some states you don't have to do publishing of the name, but some you do, but some you could waive that requirement, but some you can't really waive that requirement. And so it is confusing on a meta level that I think that there isn't just one straightforward bureaucratic process that just applies to everybody everywhere in the United States, of this is the process for changing your name. Maybe this is the process if you're changing your first and or second and or first and second names, but maybe this is a different process if you're changing your last name, or maybe it's the same process and the only thing that you have to add more steps for is whether you're a minor or not, because then you have to get guardian permission. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. It's a very confusing very confusing process with a lot of bureaucratic steps that are very overwhelming. So backing up, just trying to get timeline of events, it's the main point is that it's not a one and done thing. There's a lot of steps involved, even if you are like the simplest pathway, much less if you're at the other end of the spectrum and it's just illegal for you. Like I think in Kansas, if you change your name, the state could just change it back. Even if you changed your name years ago, and they can just change it back because they can now, I think. But just to trans people, because I'm sure they're not changing last names of every cisgendered heterosexual woman who changed her last name to her husband's last name. Like, oh, we've decided you're going by your maiden name now because, equal fairness under the law. But anyway, so yeah, I'm glad I don't live in Kansas because they could just change it back. So anyway, it's a process. Which the other kind of thing too is to be more positive and to be more celebratory about it. It's like maybe you would want to have like a little, I don't know, party or something like on the day that it's done to be like, hey, look, here's my ID. It says this now. Woohoo. But it's like you also don't have, or maybe I don't have like that moment because there isn't like one little point. It's just a long process. So I guess it could be like, like everything else, you have to break it down into like one little step at a time. So like first you submit the paperwork, or first you find the forms you have to fill out. Then you see if you can fill out the forms. Then you have to submit the forms, and obviously you have to have a large pile of money to, press submit on the internet. And then then there could be other steps involved. So then you're like, well, what's this next step? Okay, well, what's this next step? Well, what's this next step? So it's like you might have to, contact a newspaper and notify them, and then they have to publish your name change for several weeks. And then you have to get the court date after all of the time that it's been published. But you have to time it really correctly because the newspaper needs to know when your court date is in order to publish, but the publishing has to be done before your court date. So you have to time it all correctly, and then you have to get the right forms to the right people with the right amount of money, and then you have to get the form back, and then you have to get it signed, and then you have to like send the form, and there's so many forms. And so it's like I feel like I have like bureaucracy phobia, like just anxiety for bureaucracy. It's like it gets to me like my stomach and like my nerves, and it's just like why can't I just like fill out simple forms? I don't know, but yeah, there's so many steps. So and then so then then you might have a court date, so then you had to do the court date, so then it's like, okay, well then I can relax after the court date is over. And then so there's a lot of anxiety before the court date in me personally, because this not something I typically do or am emotionally prepared for. And then then after the court date, then there's that one kind of like mini celebration of like, okay, at least that part is done. But you can't like, celebrate yet because there's still so many more steps to do. Like that's just getting the permission to be able to do the thing. But then honestly, after the court date, I didn't feel like celebrating. I had no energy. Like it's that emotional energy like crash after all of the adrenaline of the anxiety from the beginning of the day. It's just like, don't talk to me, I have no energy. But maybe that could be one milestone marker of like, okay, I did that step. Pat myself on the back for that step. What's the next step? Well, that's permission to do the thing. Then you have to do the thing, which is like going, I think, to Social Security. And you go to Social Security. So then, okay, is that the step? Is that done? Is that the moment that like the name change is legal, kind of, because then you could get like that temporary form that's like, okay, well your Social Security is in progress, and And so that's kind of like, okay, you can pat yourself on the back for that one, although you're not done yet. And then, like, things are in flux. And then, I didn't know this, but then, so it's like, I guess when you go to the Social Security, that is when you are officially starting your name change process. So, like, after the court date, like, when you go to Social Security is when it officially starts. And then I think from that date, you have, like, less than 10 days for one or 7 days for the other, but, like, less than 7 days, you have to notify the Secretary of State. Like, you have to in person go to Secretary of State office and notify them, like, within 7 days of Social Security Day. So then there's that, so it's like, I knew there's, like, okay, it's kind of like you submit the forms, and then it's like, then it's just hurry up and wait. You have to wait through the publication process. So then you're just kind of like, once you have everything set and you have the court date set, and the publication thing is ongoing, then you can kind of like hurry up and wait. And then that, like, once the court date happens, like, then you have a little bit of time, if that goes through, to you have a little bit of time before you actually, like, okay, submit it for real to Social Security. But once you start that process going of the Social Security process, then you know that everything's going to come back to back to back to back, like, all at once. Because, like, okay, you have to change your driver's, you have to change your driver's license, and you have to change your vehicle registration, and you have to change the title of your car, and you have to change your car insurance, all at once. And then, of course, your like, bank cards, you have to change that, like, all at once. And then your work situation, and that. So I kind of knew there'd be, like, kind of hurry up, and you can wait. You did all the stress of going through the paperwork part, kind of, and then you did all the stress of the court, and you had that whole hurry up and wait part over with. So now I'm starting to get into that phase where, like, things are starting back to back to back, so I can feel my, like, anxiety coming up again. But again, so I just have to, like, take it one little bit at a time of, like, okay, after the social, then you have to go to the DMV to do a lot of things. And then so you have to do, like, all the things at the DMV, which is a lot of things. And I now know, obviously make all your appointments in advance. And, there's a lot of paperwork you have to bring. And so I had all of that anxiety of doing that and having collected that and having been through that and then coming back out of that. And then, so it's like, okay, so now it's like, now I can maybe relax a little bit, and, like, okay, what have I finished? What is done? And then what do I now have to do? What are the next steps? And, trying to breathe and trying to figure all that out and just getting through each piece of it. But at the same time, again, kind of like bittersweet or just downright sad, because it's like, for example, like, when I go into the DMV, and despite all of my anxieties, I was, able to somewhat have a smooth time and, like, get in and get out and get what I needed to do, and, like, it was a smooth bureaucratic process that was, like, it was wrong how easy it was, and it just makes me feel sad realizing that, but for a zip code, it would be a completely different experience or a different outward presentation. Like, I have heard people say, that in where they live, they can't just check a box to change the gender marker on a form. Like, they can, in this zip code, they can change a gender marker on a form, but they have to bring this medical notice and this medical notice and this doctor's note and this thing and this other thing. And then they had all those things, and they brought all the forms that they needed to the DMV, and basically, like, the DMV clerk was like, I'm not doing that, come back when you pass. And I'm like, and I didn't have to do any of those things, so I feel like an asshole. I just, because I happen to live in one of the very few states that allows you to just, like, fill out a form, because I know, like, this state over and that state over, and that's, like, it's all the states around me. It's illegal. It's illegal to have done what I did. And so I just want to cry, you know, and it's like I don't know what to do. So I don't feel good, but I am still trying to. I should take some celebratory something and like, hey, I'm doing the thing that I should feel that I wanted to do, and I do feel good about it. It's just buried under so much other emotional stuff. But anyway, uh, back to like maybe more of the taciturn stuff. Like, so just today, like just at the DMV, just like doing bureaucratic stuff. Like the theme of the day for me was like, what name do I sign? Because you got to make sure, because when you're doing this thing prior on like the when you're filling out like the court forms, you very specifically have to fill out your name, your before name. But like at the so then, but at the DMV it's like, well, on do I sign I should sign the after name now, and and so that kind of little mental block of like, I'm not going to sign any, I'm going to like make sure that the clerk is witnessing me like as I'm signing it and like triple checking that I'm putting the right names. And then another thing I had noted was that like I had gotten so used to signing my new first name already just on other things in other context that actually felt natural to sign as a first name with a last name, so that actually felt fine. The weird thing for me was the middle name, because normally when you sign stuff, like you don't, or I don't sign middle names anyway, and this was actually the first time I think ever that I had signed or printed or written down on paper somewhere my new middle name. And I wasn't confident enough in my ability to also and then do it cursive. Because you learn at least for me, you only learned cursive up to, was it like third grade or something? Now I hear they don't teach it at all. But we learned it up to a certain point, and then at one point, I remember my teachers saying like, "You're never going to use this ever. You really just need to know how to sign your name, and that's it." And then they don't really teach you much more or something. Or I probably did learn more cursive than kids these days would have. And the reasoning for it is you need to be able to read historical documents, and it's good. I would advocate for it. But anyway, the point is, at some point they're like, you only use it when you sign your name. You only use it when you sign your name. So really, the only cursive that you know are the ones in your name. And if you always sign another name, and then you're changing it, so there's that whole thing. But it's like I had been writing my new first name on things for a while, for at least over a year. It's not like I fill out, maybe it wasn't bureaucratic documents, but I would sign it on other things. So that was becoming easier, and now that's more natural to sign. But like I said, I think this was my very first time signing my middle name. And so I think on one document, I think I very carefully did a cursive of it. Well, like the point is, I do know the cursive of my original name and then new name, but like, so, but for the middle, I hadn't thought about it, and so it's like I think I did attempt cursive on one of the forms, and then for the rest of the forms, I was like, fuck it, and I just printed it. So like, sign the first, print the second, sign the last. And the last one, since I'm not changing the last one, and since I've done the last one forever, like now, like my normal signature for my last name for years is just like, it's like the first letter and then like a scrawl. And so I do have to actually think on specific forms. So like, let me make sure I actually sign it well and proper instead of my normal scrawl that I normally do, and just thinking about all of those little, well, not little, but minutia of the forms. So anyway, just doing that, I guess, and then realizing that I had to do like multiple things at the DMV, which I should have thought it through better, because then But anyway, it's okay. So it's like you go through for like round one, and then you like go through for like round two through a different loop to do the other stuff, like the car. It's like the name related stuff, and then like the car related stuff. And luckily, some of that was easier than it could have been, um, and stuff like that. And so anyway, like I had my title, like I had paid off my car because I'm like, oh god, if I hadn't paid off my car, I could foresee that being a huge damn nightmare. But I had paid it off, so I had the title. So it's like I had, part of the collection of the mounds of paperwork, and that was another kind of surreal thing. I was like driving around in my car, and like on my passenger seat is just this like cheap, like not even like manila, like just like a cheap file foldery thing, not like even like a real folder like kids have to put in their backpack that actually like closes, like just like open like file folder thing I'd like grab from somewhere, and like I had all my stuff in it. It was like slightly better than just grabbing all my forms and like shoving them in a bucket and be like, here's all of my life's identity in this bucket right here. But pretty much, but just like flat and in a little file folder and on my passenger seat. And I'm just like, and you just look over and you're like, oh, so this is the sum total of my life right here. These couple of papers. It's like, it's like my birth certificate, my social, my, all this other, like all this other stuff, like my car title, like, all there in this one little thing, and just like that's the sum total of everything just right there. And like I couldn't even like have like a nice little briefcase or something to put it in, or like a folder. But in hindsight, like having come back from like the DMV, I honestly think everybody kind of had the same situation paper wise that I did. It was like a bunch of papers stuffed in a little like manila-y thing. Or like, like nobody, I didn't see anybody in there with like a proper, like, I don't know, briefcase with like folders and like accordion. Yeah, we open it up and they're all like organized. Like I didn't see anybody in it. So maybe I'm more normal than I give myself credit for. Like here, at least it wasn't like in a wad. But anyway, and I don't know. Oh, you have to take your glasses off when they take the photo of you, which I just found disorienting. I'm like, why can't I wear my glasses? I need them to see. But I guess I get it. I don't know. Another funny thing, I guess, if I was that when I was filling out like the forms, they have to ask you. I think they have to ask you like your height and your weight and stuff. And so, they're like, is this your height? I'm like, yeah. And my weight was legitimately much, much different than the last time I did my driver's license. Because, like, I don't care about, like, numbers and stuff. And so, like, I would just throw, like, a loose approximate out each time. And if it hadn't changed much at all, then I probably wouldn't have said anything. But there was, like, a significant difference. So I'm like, well, no, I can't say leave it. So I made up another number that I thought would be like in the ballpark for that to like update my weight. But then like because to be more accurate. But anyway, the funny part was, so they're like height and then weight, and then are your eyes blue, and they're like, is your hair brown? And so I thought that was kind of funny. Like if my hair hadn't been dyed, would the clerk have asked me what color my hair was? Or is that something that's just self-reported always? Like, just give me your height, your weight, your eye, and your hair. Irregardless. I don't know. But I just found it funny that they had to ask, and then I had to respond, neither of which with the color of what it actually is. Like, your hair's brown, right? Yes, it's brown. It kind of felt like one of those, the day is night, right? But I guess I get it. So that I appreciated that little moment of, I guess, levity in what otherwise would just be something purely anxious. Well, anxious on my end. Like, I think, everybody I interacted with was fine, so it's all good. It's just, my anxieties and things and stuff. But yeah, so that's all over with. And then, so now part of it, I guess, is a little bit of waiting, because it's like you have temporary forms and you have to wait maybe quite a while to actually get the actual like cards and stuff in. But on the other hand, I think I do have to hurry up and do all that other stuff at the same time anyway. Like, I have to, like, obviously call my, like, car insurance people, like, right away. It's just, you can't do that until you have, like, the driver's license locked down. So it's like you have to do all this. So I feel like you have to do all this stuff to get the driver's license. Well, you have to do all this stuff to get the social is the first thing, and then from the social, then you can get the driver's license, and then from the driver's license, then everything, I think, branches out from there. And so, like, I immediately have to do, like, the car insurance, and then I think I figure it out from there. Like, I have to go to my bank, and, like, I have to, like, contact work, and I have to, like, you know. But luckily for me, like, from there on out, it's much simpler for me than it would be for, I think, most people, because it's like I don't have, like, dependents, I don't have properties, I don't have shit, so at least there's not a whole lot of unwinding or unraveling or changing around that I have to do with all that. It's just like the basic stuff. I have to do the basic stuff, and at least I'm allowed legally to do said basic stuff, which makes me sad. But anyway, closing thoughts and everything. Or thoughts I had right before I started pressing record was, neither here nor there. The other day, I was watching, Critical Role's 4-sided dive, 6-sided dive, and, well, anyway, they're playing, neither here nor there, they're playing Jenga. And, like, the tower is really, really, like, on thin ice. Like, there's only one, like, leg that it's standing on the bottom, and, like, most of the pieces are missing, and, like, in that state where you feel like, the next person up is gonna knock it over. And so, one of the people on the show, Liam O'Brien, said something like, there's a whole lot of potential energy stored in that tower. And I just really like that line. And then, my brain kind of went off on some kind of tangent from that line. Was just like, okay, I was looking at these papers, like, it's, it's not personal information you print it off the internet. It's like, how to change your name for an adult in the state that I'm in. And, just it's 3 pages of papers. And it's like, not, there's a whole lot of potential energy stored in there, but, like, the way my brain was thinking about it was I was thinking about that line from earlier, like, oh, there's a whole lot of potential energy stored in that tower. And then I was, like, holding those papers as I was going through my things, and then, like, looking at these and being like, there's a whole lot of anxiety stored in these papers, or more than just anxiety, but, like, other emotions as well. And so that's, I don't know, weird analogy or metaphor, because, it's like the potential energy, like, that's an actual physical, like, physics measurement of, like, I don't know, the force with gravity and friction and things like that of, potential to kinetic, but like an actual objective measurement that you can take. And then, obviously saying, well, anxiety stored in papers is metaphysical, so obviously not like a one-to-one. But there was something, it felt akin to that in my mind, of, like, the potential energy stored in the tower with, like, the anxiety stored in the papers. So, like, any object that can be imbued with whatever emotion you put into it. Like, a photograph, and you want to frame it, or a kid's painting and you want to put it on your wall or something, it's not just an object, it's imbued with, maybe one word would be sentimentality, imbued with sentiment, imbued with endearment. But yeah, like, something can be imbued with anxiety, like, you could be, like, holding your, like, 1099s when you're going to prepare your taxes and be like, these documents are physically giving me a headache or something. So it's like when I think about these papers, earlier I was thinking like it was a mix of emotions of like how after the fact, because this is just part one of part one of part one. This was just like how to basically do all the things you have to do to go to court, and then once you go to court, you're on your own. Next part's up to you. Find another how to. This is just that first part. So so then it's like, okay, well, these papers are not relevant to me now, and so I can recycle them, draw on the back of them, turn them into a paper airplane, whatever. But yeah, I guess after the fact, there's more of a sense of ease and like appreciation, and like these stupid papers were like a guidebook, like to help me get through some things. And like there's parts that I like crossed off, and like somebody else made some notes there, and then I made some notes here, and then I scratched off that part, and then like I put another note over there, and then there's like an arrow over there, and then like I made like post-it notes on the back. Like the damn things that I have to do to get myself through bureaucracy. Like, I don't know. Somebody the other day was saying like sometimes the neurodivergent brain and bureaucracy don't go well together. And I was like, oh, well, that might apply to me. But anyway, so like a lot of anxiety was stored in these papers of like, I can't look at them right now. But then also like gratitude and like appreciation and like, okay, I don't know what else, but at the end of the day, they are just papers too. So just reflecting, I guess, for a moment on how objects can start to be imbued with sentiment, I guess. I don't know, whatever. Now I'm just getting tired. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I didn't have a hypothesis. I didn't have a thesis, so I don't have a conclusion. I just wanted to, I guess, process some of my thoughts on the process of name change. Like, hey, go me, I did a thing. But also more like, I am progressively doing a thing. But yeah, so anyway, whatever. And just trying to unravel that complicated mixture of working through anxiety and trying to progress forward like one step at a time, and then like I do get stressed, and then trying to decompress afterward, and at the same time wanting to be celebratory, even if I don't know what that even looks like, buy myself a cookie or something. But at the same time overwhelmed with some kind of anger and grief over just what's happening in every other zip code around me, and not knowing what to do with or process all of those things. So yeah, just rambling to myself and rambling to the internet to see if that maybe does any good or anybody else any good. I don't know, but I did a thing, and that was earlier today. So, parting thoughts. Oh, on the upside, because I want to end with like a positive note. Two employees of within the whole system of things that I had to go through, just by doing some seemingly small innocuous thing, really went a long way to like making me feel comfortable, making me feel better, and maybe ways that they maybe wouldn't even know about. I don't know. And I just thought so I should mention that and be mindful of all of that. Was one, once I got into the courthouse, so that was a whole lot of like anxieties and stuff, and like I had to do like the Zoom court at home, but then I still had to physically drive to the courthouse anyway. And then it's like, then I wasn't mindful enough of what I was wearing, and of course I set off the metal detector, and I'm taking off my like belt and like my things, and like things are setting. I maybe my shoes or my bra were setting off the metal detector or something. And so I have to get wanted down, and then you have to go through security, and then you do the thing, and and then all this stuff, and you have all your papers, and then you're putting your belt back on, and you're grabbing your papers together, and like you're trying to compose yourself and all this stuff, and you're already frazzled, and then like you come in and you have to go like kind of deep into the building sort of, but then there was like this like I don't know, maybe it was a help desk or something, with a person there who's like guiding you where you need to go. I don't know their pronouns. I guess she they looked femme presenting, very friendly and positive, and had little colorful little gnomes on her desk. And you pretty much have to come right up to her to get to that section, and then be like, hey, can you help me, like where do I go from here? And she then directed me at like, oh, you need to go down to da da da, and perfectly pleasant. But more than anything, it was just the fact that she had those little gnomes on her desk of just kind of like setting this positive vibe, or this like more cheerful vibe in the middle of a place that I think would make, unless you work there, well, maybe, I don't know, would make almost anybody incredibly stressed to be inside there. And so I just thought that was nice, that little touch. And then today at the DMV, similarly, again, I went to one DMV, but then I didn't have like an appointment, but then they didn't do the things that I needed to do at that DMV, and so then I made an appointment, but I couldn't make an appointment for that DMV because they don't do that for some reason, or maybe they were booked up, or I don't know. So then I had to go out of town, like to this other DMV, which was fine. But you get there, and then like you have to go through the other thing, and then the guy, and then they put you in a different line, and then you have to go through the thing, and then the guy, and then you have to talk to the cop, and then the cop is like, you're too early for your appointment, so I can't let you in the building yet. So then I'm like waiting for my car, and it's like humid out, and then like then whatever, and finally then I get through the thing, and then I have to go through the cop again, and then I get in the line, and I have to wait in line, and then when I finally get to the part where you can come into the DMV, where it's like, well, welcome to the DMV, like the info part where they're gonna like help you out and direct you where you need to go. That person, when you finally got up to that person, again, I don't know their pronouns, she, they, femme presenting, really nice, really friendly, but just like on her lapel, she had not one, but two different pro-LGBT pins on her lapel. One of them was two rainbow flags, and that was one pin. And then the other one, I think, was love is love. So here, a DMV worker, then like front of house, is allowed to, wear that at work, and so like again, smacking me in the face with like the privilege of my zip code and my state, but also like overwhelmingly like grateful in that moment that I am in the state I'm in. No, the physical one, and we're just grateful for her in that moment that like she chose to wear those pins, and that gave me a sense of comfort, like just coming in the door after other things. But yeah, I guess that's a way to end that on a positive note and stuff. And I guess I will end the video there. Everybody be nice out there.